I'm gonna let people.
I lost gallery view. I'm really bad at Zoom. Does anyone know, like, can you guys see me still?
We can see you very well.
I can't see you guys.
You can find the gallery view at the top of your little screen. It's a 3x3 little square. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for February's edition of Diversability Unplugged. We are talking all about disability and fashion, and on your screen right now, you will see a graphic of our flyer featuring our powerhouse panel and one logo from our powerhouse panel, which we have 2 speakers from Open Style Lab. For an image description, while we are waiting for everyone to come in, we ask that all microphones are muted throughout the event, and that is in white text at the top of the navy and blue border of this graphic, and in navy text below that on a peach background, it says Diversability Unplugged, Disability and Fashion. Below that, we have 4 round graphics, 3 of which are headshots, and the last one is a logo. Starting from the left to right, we have Quayshawn Williams, he, him. He's also known as Manikin. He's a fashion designer, a Black man with dreadlocks in a bun, wearing a black turtleneck sweater. Marta Elena, she, her, founder of Abilitee, a light-skinned Hispanic woman smiling at the camera with long brown hair and brown eyes, wearing a gray t-shirt. Lissie Cox, she, her, a content creator, a pale-skinned woman with dark brown wavy hair pulled back halfway, wearing a white crop top, and an Open Style Lab logo that has the words in bold black text next to a red backslash above the words Poppy and Yasmin from Open Style Lab. Centered at the bottom are the words join our online communities. The Diversability Leadership Collective, and get your first week free at https diversability.mn.co, and the Facebook group bit.ly/diversability. At the bottom of the graphic, there is a white Diversability logo. Again, we ask that the microphones stay muted throughout the event, but you can ask your questions throughout the entire time in the chat section. And please put a Q in the beginning of your question so it's easier for us to find. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Ending the screen share. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Marie Dagenet Lewis, and I am a pale-skinned woman with long dark hair, wearing a black top and an olive sweater. And I have the honor of being one of the content managers here at Diversability, where our entirely disabled team works to ensure that we're elevating disabled pride together through community and conversation. Before we get started, I want to mention that Diversability is sponsoring a panel all about disability for this year's BodCon, happening on February 27th. BodCon is all about promoting body positivity and self-acceptance. The conversation will be moderated by our very own Tiffany Yu, and you can find the link to purchase tickets in the chat, and we hope to see you there. Today, I'm joined by yet another powerhouse panel surrounding a discussion of disability in fashion. Adaptive fashion, or clothing designed specifically with disabilities in mind, is a growing industry expected to hit a nearly $400 billion value in the next few years. That's right, billion with a B. Our panelists are blazing trails in the fashion world with their own various ways. So let's get right to them and start with introductions. Will you guys please tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship to fashion, including a visual description with yourself? And Quayshawn, I would love to start with you.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Quayshawn Williams, and I am a fashion and costume designer and the owner of contemporary streetwear brand Manikin Mob. I am affectionately known as the one-hand sewing man, and I am an African-American man with dreadlocks pulled back with a full face of makeup, with a black turtleneck on and a gold chain. A little bit about me is fashion found me was it's interesting because fashion was something that I never really thought of as a kid. It wasn't something that I thought I would be have a career in. I didn't see anyone around me or anything like that. Fashion actually found me because it was the first time where I actually found a voice from being a child with a disability and actually being recognized for something other than my disability. And because of that, I have ignited something inside of me to now today where I have an amazing brand, which is Manikin Mob brand. So nice to meet everyone.
Thank you so much. And it's true, I was fangirling over your Instagram too when I heard you were on this panel. So I'm very excited to learn more about your journey and everything. And before we get to our next panelist, I just want to make sure that if you will benefit from using closed captioning, you can find it at the bottom of your screen by clicking the ... more, and you can show subtitle or you can view full transcript like that. Next, Marta, Elena, I would love to know about your relationship to fashion and a little bit about you, including a visual description, please.
Sure. I want to say that I was also fangirling over Manikin fashion the last couple of days ever since I found out that you were going to be on the panel with me. But I guess I will start by my description, which is that I'm a light-skinned Hispanic woman with long, wavy brown hair. I see that someone just said they're from San Diego. I was in San Diego for 2 years when I was in med school before I dropped out, which is a good intro or segue into why or how I got into fashion, which is actually kind of similar to what we just heard if you replace disability with neurodivergence, although I guess neurodiversity tends to be under the umbrella of disability. So there's a lot of parallels there. But I think that fashion was like recently the first time that I feel like I've been able to like fully self-express. And I think that figuring out I don't know, like who I am visually and how to communicate that to other people when I can't do that so easily with words or emotions tends to, I don't know, it's just like brought something really important to my life. So that's kind of like why I'm interested in fashion. It's like the visual language, I think that might actually be one of the most effective ways we can talk about disability and our differences because it's so visual and it's so emotional and it's so personal, but it's also so universal. So that's, I guess, my little intro. Did I miss anything? I'm in Austin, Texas, 31, and I own a brand called Abilitee.
Thank you so much. And I love how you just really touched on like the beauty and individuality of fashion, because really that's something that when I was younger, I didn't really understand. So I can't wait to learn more about it from you. Next, Lissie, please give us an introduction to your world with fashion and a visual description. Wait, I think she might be can you hear us, Lissie? She might be having issues. So I'm gonna first go to Poppy from Open Style Lab, and then while we get this worked out with Lissie. Hi, Poppy.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm from Open Style Lab, and we're a nonprofit that makes fashion, or we're committed to making fashion accessible for all abilities. And I am the social and community manager there. I have a backstory in fashion, really using it as a mask because I have chronic illnesses. So I use it to try and look healthy. And that's how I started really getting into fashion. And then I realized a lot of fashion I couldn't wear. So I went down that route of thinking, how can I make fashion more accessible to me personally? And even did my degree on it and just hyper fixated on it for a long time. But yeah, thank you. Sorry, I have ADHD, so my brain is very scatty. Yeah, I know Elena can relate. So I was going to pass over the mic to Yasmin. First of all, I forgot to do an image description. I'm a white blonde woman sitting in a blurry room with a red top on, and I have some light makeup on.
Thank you so much, Poppy. And Yasmin is another person from Open Style Lab. So I would love to hear from you. Hi, Yasmin.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'll start with my image description. My name is Yasmin. I'm a white, light-skinned woman with dark hair. I'm wearing a black polo neck and a green shirt, and I have a white background. So my role at Open Style Labs is I run their research team. So what we do is we do a lot of research with the community, trying to understand what are the main pain points and what can we do better to serve the community. My relationship with fashion started very young and disability. I was born with a physical disability with my leg and my back. And it was always really hard to find stuff that worked. And I came from a family of architects and designers and artists. So beauty, fashion, it's in the social fabric of how we interact. And so it was a way of me expressing myself and getting around clothing that didn't quite work. My main pain point is shoes.
I love it. And it's like, you kind of feel a little bit like MacGyver, I must imagine, trying to figure out and make it work for you and try to make something exist that doesn't exist. And really, that leads into my first question while we wait for Lizzie while we fix these technical issues. I would really love to know the feeling you felt when you found an article of fashion that was just made for you. It was like, how did that feel? Quayshawn, I would love to hear from you first on the moment.
Right. Okay. So it's actually interesting being a guy with a disability and in fashion already. I didn't even know there was such thing of adaptive wear fashion. I wasn't introduced to the word adaptive wear fashion until my senior year at Montclair State University. And our senior project was adaptive wear. We had to create an adaptive wear garment. So in my head, I was like, well, what's an adaptive wear garment? And when I found out the description of the adaptive wear garment, I literally was in shock, and I was excited at the same time because when you're for me growing up, I always felt like there was a part of me that was a mystery because I didn't know technically what my disability was called. It wasn't until about 2018 when I found out a technical term, which is Erb's palsy. So as a kid growing up and not knowing how I was going to be when I got older, would my arm grow, would it work? I just always had that sense of mystery and sometimes that sense of inadequacy about myself. So when I found out that there was adaptive fashion for people with disabilities, and me being a fashion designer, although I didn't know technically what that term was, I was always, in a sense, creating adaptive wear fashion because I had to always adjust my garments, like my sleeves in particular, because my left arm is smaller than my right arm. So I was always kind of creating my own style and adding elastic to kind of make sure that my sleeves stayed up, or if I had to roll my sleeves up on blazers, just so that way the outfit balanced and it actually looked really cute at the same time. So when I found out that there was an actual industry of adaptive wear fashion for people with disabilities, I was excited just because I'm a creator of fashion. So there is nothing more important to me than representation and knowing that there's a space for people with disabilities to have not only clothing that's functional and that works, but looks absolutely amazing. I mean, who doesn't want to look fashionable, you know? So I was very excited.
I can't even imagine. And that's one thing that I love about just looking at your Instagram grid is the fact that you take that fashion into account. A lot of the designs that are more mainstream are all function, and it loses that element.
Yeah, and I mean, I believe that there shouldn't be, because I didn't know what my disability was called, I didn't necessarily have a limitation in my mind that I was only supposed to wear a certain type of garment. So I always looked at the mainstream fashion. I've always looked in Vogue magazine, and those were styles that I looked up to and inspired to have. So I just had to remix them to fit me, not knowing that that was adaptive fashion in a sense. So yeah.
I love it. And we're going to dive a little bit more into that whole like universal design concepts a little later on. But now I want to ask Marta, Elena, I would love to pose the same question to you. What did that moment feel like when you found this new love, and like, how did it feel for you?
Yeah, I think I was like really young when I first like fell in love with fashion, but it was kind of like beaten out of me in a way, like by, I mean, just like society, like by the academic community, the scientific community, saying that like fashion just wasn't important. It didn't hold like a place in our future intellectually. Like it wasn't, I don't know, like I grew up in a community that was very much like not about the arts for like the sake of the arts. So for me, like I feel like I fell in love with fashion at a young age, and then I sort of like fell into the like neurotypical capitalist grind of just like going to school for the rest of my life, holding like a job, sitting in a what are they even called, cubicle, like that just like became my future until the last couple of years when I realized like I don't have to live that way. I can actually, like, I'm privileged in the sense that I can figure out a career that works for me, and fashion just being one of my like longtime loves. Then finding out that there was this whole opportunity to like connect my advocacy and just like my love of people with fashion and do something that needs to be done or like contribute to this movement of inclusive fashion, it sort of just all came together again in the last couple of years. So I want to, I guess, answer your question or answer a different question, which is like, how did I find an industry that like was meant for me? And I think it was when I started meeting people in the industry and talking to them just like through DMs on Instagram, through voice messages, like meeting influencers like Val the Rationale and Victoria Jenkins and Alex Harold, all of these like amazing women and people who are in this industry trying to push it forward and doing it because they love fashion and they love people and they love equality, and they realize, or we realize, that like fashion won't exist unless we adapt it to everyone. Like social media is giving all of us a voice finally. It's not just the neurotypical able-bodied society that is able to have conversations now. It's all of us. And I think that we're realizing that we can play a role in our own futures by just communicating with each other. Like it doesn't even require more work than that, but that's sort of an ADHD tangent. I could go on forever, so I'll stop there. But yeah, that's my answer.
I love it because you're so right. It's like we are so lucky to live in a world to where we can create our own careers through social media, where we would have never had the access to become designers, creators, consultants. Social media has made that so accessible. And you lead me now to Lissie. I'm so excited to see you. You are slaying it today. We're talking all about the moment, how it felt when you found fashion that was for you. And also, please tell us a little bit about you and your work, because you weren't able to really introduce yourself in the beginning. So I would love to give you that time now.
Hi, I'm Lissie. I'm a content creator, Instagrammer. I've been obsessed with fashion since I was a little kid. Like I used to read, like my sisters would be reading like J14 or like Tiger Beat, and I would be reading Teen Vogue. So that's kind of like, I started my first fashion blog when I was 12, like, and now I have a blog, I don't use it as often. And but I write little mini blogs in my captions on Instagram. But like, so Also, sorry about the Zoom technical difficulties. I have no idea why it just kept kicking me out, but yeah, so sorry, I'm nervous. The question was like about finding fashion that's like for us, right? Sorry, my brain fog. But yeah, I've been plus size my whole life, and then becoming or learning that I'm disabled, I'm low vision, I have multiple chronic illnesses. It's kind of been like, I mean, when I was a kid, I would wear like women's clothes in like 5th grade because they made plus size kids clothes, but they were still too small for me most of the time. So it's like, yeah, so within the recent years, there's been a big movement with plus size fashion, especially, and the accessible fashion and adaptable fashion. And the sad thing is that a lot of adaptable fashion still doesn't come in plus sizes. So like, I'm sorry, the Zoom messing up really messed me up, but yeah, so it's just like finding clothes that fit me in the more recent years has been a huge life changer. Like, they make funky dresses in my size these days.
I love it, Lizzie, and never apologize for having brain fog, for ADHD tangents, because that's why we're here. We're all in like kindred spirits. It's a safe space, and I just really vibe with how you were speaking about everything, Lizzie, because that's why you are so important, because the adaptive fashion industry still has a lot more trails they need to blaze, honestly, and your existence, your voice, and your content will make sure that that happens. So I can't wait to see what more comes out of just all of your funky dresses and your beautiful eyeshadow. And Yasmin, I would love to know what the feeling was like for you when you found fashion, whether it was adaptive fashion or universal fashion. How did that feel for you?
I'm trying to think of the first time. I can't think of the first time. I can think of moments. I think my biggest thing was finding shoes that fit, and that the whole outfit was just off because the shoes, I could only wear these bulky big things because I wear a leg brace. And I went and I learned how to make shoes one summer and I made these kind of pumps that were a little bit bigger just on the right leg for my brother's wedding. And I remember that feeling was great, having something that I felt, one, I made. And I think this is something that maybe isn't talked about enough, which is people with disabilities are amazing life hackers and also potential to be makers as well. And it's important to make those tools accessible, because it's very empowering to make your own things. And so I think the moment when I found that is trying to figure out what worked for me. But I mean, I found Open Style Labs, I think 2 years ago, and that really changed my life, because that was really being on that side of being part of it and listening to other people who had similar problems or, way worse than me, and understanding like all the different issues. Like my one was just one little tiny piece of the puzzle. So it's been really humbling to hear those stories and to be part of the understanding what the solutions could be.
Yes, and it's just, you remind me of what Quayshawn was saying too, how like he had to had like the arms of his clothes and everything. It's like creating and adapting is what we do best, honestly. And I really love that we're starting to see that shift in paradigm, where I feel like people are starting to acknowledge at least a little bit, and that's just what we need to start that snowball effect. Poppy, I would love to hear about the moment where you felt that this is for me, adaptive fashion is it. Like, how did it feel to be accepted in a way by fashion for once?
So Yasmin and I were reading the questions earlier, and I think it was can you tell us how it felt when when you found something that made it feel like the particular fashion was created inclusively just for you? And we couldn't really think of anything, like one particular instance. And we really sat there for like 5-10 minutes, like, have we actually experienced that? We've experienced little bits, like Yasmin mentioned. And I think ultimately for me, the thing that was most empowering was realizing that I could hack and I could make my own clothing or adjust my own clothing. It was never about buying it for me. I wish that would be the case, and it would be price accessible, size accessible, all of the things. But that's why I think I love Open Style Lab so much, is that we prioritize giving accessible tools and education and teaching disabled people how to hack their own clothing. And I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know we were allowed to do that for a long time. And when I joined Open Style Lab, they had this amazing hack kit where you can add like plackets and pockets to your clothing. And like, I feel like you don't have to be disabled to appreciate that one. And I was like, wait, like we can do this? We're allowed to do this? So I think that was the moment for me where I really felt included. And it wasn't something like from the market. It was a group of disabled people who came together and decided to create a kit that would not solve every problem, but just make things a bit better. And I think that's very empowering, having that ownership of your clothing. So for me, that's my experience. I don't know if Yasmin can relate, but yeah.
And just listening to you say that, like, it was a community type of project, do you think that was the difference? The fact that it was a bunch of multifaceted disabled experiences that went into that little kit?
Yes, definitely. So we team a group of engineers and occupational therapists and designers with disabled people, because I have all these ideas, for example, but I don't know how to always apply them. And then we co-create and we learn from each other, and it's that collaboration. And then obviously always prioritizing disabled people and making with and not for, because obviously we're often made for and not with, and that can be incredibly frustrating because non-disabled people might not have any idea about what we need. So yeah, that definitely makes all the difference and is needed more often, to say the least.
For sure, because you know, even if we know what we need, we might not even know that we can get that fixed. We might not, like you said, this is a thing. So it's like that collaboration is what makes the difference and what's beautiful. But it's sad because that collaboration isn't really found a lot sometimes. And so that really brings me to our next topic, is the challenges that you've really faced when it comes to the industry or just clothing in general. What's been your biggest challenge so far, Quayshawn, when it comes to everything?
As I was thinking about this question, at first I was thinking, okay, what about the physical clothing? Maybe that was probably like something I had a challenge with. But then I had to dig deeper, and I realized that in the beginning stages, at least as a kid going into my teenage years, the biggest challenge for me was actually being comfortable with wearing clothing, particularly short sleeve garments or sleeveless garments. My past self would be proud of me today for wearing a sleeveless top. I always felt like that was a challenge because I didn't fully accept who I was. And because of that, I felt like if I ever wore a short sleeve shirt or anything that revealed my disability, that people would notice it, and people would may say things, they may stare, they may do this, they may do that. And those were things that I didn't want people to do at all. Those were things that I was trying to run away from since being a child, growing up. So I felt like that was one of the main challenges I had early on, was just being comfortable enough to wear clothing and being okay with people actually taking notice to my arm because I decided to wear a short sleeve shirt because it's 100 degrees outside. And then another thing would be just the fit of some of the garments, just because like my left arm is shorter than my right arm. smaller than my right arm, and my shoulder is a little bit different, shaped a bit different than my right arm. So just finding garments that just set well on my body, because I was aware and conscious of style and just making sure that everything was aligned and in balance, just to take pictures. And when I started to really pay attention to my appearance, those were things I just was concerned about, just being able to find garments that didn't drown out my left arm and looked crazy to me. Yeah, so that was some of the challenges, and like I said, different hacks of just adding elastic, maybe a safety pin here and there, or just rolling up the sleeves just to save time. And again, just trying to not have that anxiety of showcasing my arm through my garments be a thing that stopped me from dressing the way I wanted to and wearing the things that I wanted to wear.
Like, that's so powerful, because really internalized ableism is one of the biggest obstacles of all. So I love that we just started off with that, because that is such a big thing. Like, we are made to feel a certain way about our bodies, and then it's just something that Dakota in the comments said, Stigma is still so strong. Do I use style to disguise a disability or to accommodate myself? And the struggle is so real. And when you said that younger you would be so proud that you are wearing a sleeveless shirt, I was just like cheering you on internally too. But thank you so much. And now, Marta, I would love to hear from you. What has been your challenge? Because I know you've come from a STEM background, so I feel like there's had to be a lot of internalized challenges too that you've had to deal with.
Oh yeah, definitely. I could probably talk forever about challenges because there are so many. One of them is definitely like the environment that I grew up in and just being in academia for so long. And like academia is ableist, like medical education is ableist, like going through all of these, I mean, kind of different, like almost careers, none of them felt right. And like realizing like, oh, like shit, there's ableism here, there's ableism here, there's ableism here. Like, how do I do like what feels like right and in line with my values and my beliefs in, equity and equality, while also making a career for myself. And in the past, it was like, how do I meet other people's expectations of what I should be doing with my career? Like, how do I make other people happy? And finally, the last few years, I've like realized that like that was sort of this almost like self-imposed challenge I had to get over, which was just like, you need to do what's right for you and you need to do what makes you happy. And for me, that's, kind of disrupting the fashion industry, but it's like the biggest challenge that I find there is like, how do you do that without burning out and like without making, I don't know, big mistakes and not being as inclusive as you want to be. And I think for me, the answer there, sorry, my dog is scraping up against me. The answer there is just listening to people, talking to people, getting to know people. And I think like not doing things just because it's the way they've always been done. So like with fashion, it's such a competitive, like cutthroat industry, and like, why? Like, who said it has to be? But it is. And I think that's kind of where we like come to this point where we have to get over this challenge of like, how do we find a seat at the table? It's like, no, like, let's start a new table. Like, let's start a new party. We weren't invited to the party. Like, let's have our own. It's going to be better. It's going to be more fun. It'll be more inclusive. And how do we build like an industry around that, like that feeling and like genuine inclusion, and not just for inclusion's sake, but like realizing that everything is more beautiful when there are more people involved, when we have more diversity and we have more representation. And it's just like, how do you make other people, or not make other people, but get other people like in the fashion industry, the traditional industry, to understand that and to like be on board. Like that for me is the biggest challenge, is like creating change, but doing it in a way that people understand so that you can get people on board. So I don't have the answer to that, but that's, I think, my biggest challenge.
Yes, and I don't think anyone really has the one answer to that, but I really hope that through the parties that you make, then the ones that are exclusive, they notice how much better those other parties are, and they adapt to try to beat our parties. Because you're right, if a party doesn't include us, I don't want to be there. Let's just make our own cooler one where we accept everybody and we don't have to apologize for being who we are. So I love that insight. Thank you so much. And Lissie, I would love to hear about your challenges and what is the biggest one you face as a content creator and just in your life as general when it comes to fashion.
So the biggest struggle in my life so far has been like getting diagnosed with 2 chronic illnesses that are pretty severe and then being told I'm going blind within 6 months of each other. So that was a pretty big challenge. But it also was a blessing in disguise. And I hate to be cheesy, like, oh, it was a blessing in disguise, but it really was, because it opened me up to this whole world of just like inclusion and giving me like a passion almost, because I have been, like I said, I've been fashion blogging since I was 12 on and off. I started my Instagram a couple of years ago and started really getting hardcore into it when I became disabled, pretty much, because finding that community and that purpose in life to like show that like I can be fashionable, I can be disabled, and I can be fat all at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. And being able to fight for inclusivity for both disability and fatness, and like being able to teach people how they can intersect too. Like that's a huge part of my life, because for me, I can't take disability, I can't untangle disability from any part of my life, and I can't really untangle fatness from any part of my life, because it's affected me for my like anti-fat bias has affected me my whole life. And so combining like my passion for fashion, my passion for fighting for inclusivity, and my passion for like breaking down anti-fat bias has been challenging, but and obviously being told I'm sick and going blind within 6 months of each other was challenging, but I wouldn't be at this panel if it weren't for any of that. So yeah.
And before I move on, I know we have quite a few low vision members in the audience who is very happy to hear your experience. I would love to know, like, with the challenge of being told that you're losing your vision, how did that impact you with fashion? How did you adapt? How is fashion for you now? Like, what's your adaptations with that?
A lot of it has become, I've gotten more into texture, because I can't always see like the patterns in the clothes very well. I mean, I still have, when I wear my glasses, my bifocals, I have about 20/40 vision. So I'm not like super, but I will be legally blind within probably 5 years. So it's a slip, it's going down quick. I was 20/20 when I was 20. So yeah. But it's been very, it's been scary, because like I'll go to the thrift store and I can't see things because they're so mushed together, and it's just all of everything in the thrift store is already so overwhelming, and then it's like all blurred and I can't see what I'm looking at. So I just kind of feel for textures that I like, and then if I like a texture and I pull it out, I'm like, oh, this is cute. Yeah, it's cute. Or I'll be like, I don't like this so much. But yeah, so texture has been a huge thing. As well as with my chronic illnesses, texture is a huge thing, because I have allodynia with my fibromyalgia, which makes anything too tight sometimes just like cause so much pain. But yeah, I hope that answered the question.
It really did. Thank you so much for sharing, Lissie. I really appreciate that insight. And it's just, I hope someone hears that so they create more and so they're much. Yasmin, I would love to hear your challenge, because I know we've talked a little bit about your challenges, but what have you found to be like the biggest challenge so far?
When it comes to clothing or fashion?
Whichever one you feel is more challenging, honestly, whichever.
So I wanted to say that actually, Quayshawn and I really related to this thing of, do you expose the disability or do you hide it? And I've kind of struggled with that my whole life. My legs deformed, and I kind of, I think it came with age, but it was also trying to find fashion that worked for me, the style. Do I make it tight? Do I make it loose in certain areas? And I think as you got older, you kind of found more confidence, and you accepted yourself more. But I think also Marta and Lizzie, you talked about kind of stigma and representation and not maybe seeing yourself as well. And that's why I think representation is so important, because I didn't have a role model to go on how I could style it. I kind of figured it out, talked a lot with my mum. But yeah, I think it was trying to find a style that worked for me, that made me have fun with it, because I love fashion, I love design, and trying to figure out what kind of works in this, but also navigating, do I want to expose it? Do I want to cover it? And actually a lot of the people that I'm interviewing at the moment, that's a common thing, especially like also in maybe interviews, you know. I know in the States, a lot of like your health insurance is attached to your job, and do I expose my disability? Do I not? And clothing can do that, for better and for worse. I don't know what to say about that, but thank you. Yeah.
You're right. And I mean, it's honestly, it should be our choice of whether or not we want to expose ourselves, if we want to wear our disability loud and proud, if there's a day we want to be noticed not for our disability. It's our choice, and clothing should give us that power, that freedom, and everything like that. And before we get to Poppy, I just love to remind everybody, if you have a question that you would love our panel to answer, please just put it in the chat. And if you start off with the Q, just like Nate did over there, we would get to it towards the end. And so Poppy, I would love to hear what your biggest challenge that you really faced so far throughout your journey with fashion.
I think the biggest thing I've faced so far is probably the first hurdle, where I love accessibility, I love inclusive design, I love accessible design. And about 5 years ago, I realized I am not the problem in accessibility, it's the problem. And then I realized I could apply that to like every area of my life, including fashion. And fashion has been a big passion of mine since I was a little gal. And I also had a fashion blog, so that was when I was younger, so that was really cool to hear. And I decided I want to basically base my whole degree, which was in fashion communication and promotion, around adaptive fashion. And this was about 2016 to 2019. And no one thought it was a good idea. None of my professors or my lecturers just really vibe with it. They were so worried that I wouldn't find any research, because you have to have a certain amount of research in dissertations, apparently. And I didn't really care. I was determined to do it anyway. So I found ways around it in terms of contacting the amazing designer Lucy Jones. If you know her, she runs Fora. She's amazing. But at the time, it was really hard. It was really hard to be taken seriously, that this is a real thing. It is a big market, and that disabled people deserve it. I think that was the thing. It was bringing awareness that to disability existing. And at my university, I already experienced a lot of inaccessibility in terms of not having remote lessons, etc. So I think that was the big first hurdle. And I could have really just packed my bags and been like, nah, I'm not going to do it. I could do something easier. But because it's so personal, and I know we were discussing earlier, it's so personal because it is how you move through the world. Fashion is so important. I think people make assumptions on you based by what you wear, which is awful, but also you can use that as a power. And so I stuck with it. And in terms of actual physical clothing, I really struggle with texture as well, like the stimulation of texture, and the pain that can cause my chronic conditions. And as my chronic conditions worsened, I realized more and more clothing wasn't made for me, and it's going to continue to worsen, and more clothing is going to continue to not be made for me. And I think that's a terrifying thought, but I think today, like today, it gives me hope talking to everyone here. So yeah, I'm hopeful for the future.
Really, because people like you and everyone on this panel don't give up, and they just continue to be the representation that is lacking. That gives me hope for the future too, because that's the change, and the ableist society doesn't want that to happen, but we'll still let it happen anyway. And just to let everyone know, Lissie is having some technical difficulties, but her dad has said in the chat that they're working on it, so we'll get her back in just a little bit. And now I would like to kind of switch gears, because we've talked a little bit of universal fashion, universal design versus adaptive. Things like adaptive fashion can be kind of segregative in a way. So should we, like, I would just love your thoughts on all of that from coming from the fashion industry. And Quayshawn, I would love to start with you.
Yeah, so I mean, I believe there is some sort of segregation when it comes to adaptive fashion and universal fashion. I mean, maybe it's because of functionality or things like that. Again, because I just found out what the term adaptive fashion was in about 2019, and I'm a fashion designer with a disability. If I didn't know what that was, I always thought to myself, imagine the people who do not have a disability, or people who may not have it but have family members that have disabilities. They're not aware that adaptive fashion exists, and so they think that there's just universal fashion. So I believe that inclusion is very important to start to change that narrative of people with disabilities not being able to exist in the universal fashion world, because that's not true. Me being a fashion designer, nowadays, people don't necessarily notice my disability right away. And so to them, they may assume that it's just universal fashion, or, you know, they don't think there's anything other than that. And then when they find out that a lot of my garments are adaptive, and that I do have a disability and I'm creating these type of garments, it's opening up their minds to say that, wow, a person with a disability isn't necessarily unable to do something. And so I think that with more representation and more of these panels like this, it will start to open up the minds of the people who are in the fashion industry, the people who are fashion lovers, the people who have people with disabilities in their family or themselves as people with disabilities, to know that there is an avenue for both adaptive and universal fashion to coexist together, and allow everyone to fully express themselves the way that they should be able to, regardless of any obstacles that they may face. So that's where I'm standing at with it.
I love it. Just well said. And it makes me really understand an aspect of all of that I didn't before. So thank you so much for sharing. Marta, Elena, I would love to know your perspective on everything, and if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think what Quayshawn was saying about how he's a fashion designer with a disability, and that he didn't even know the term, adaptive wear, just this goes to show like how much of a I don't know, like marketing problem we have. I think a lot of that has to do with like just the stigmatization of disability. And it's like, we're almost like tasked with like rebranding ourselves as like a community. And I think we're actually all doing that really well, just by being ourselves and talking about it. But the question kind of brought up the idea of like, is fashion positive? And I think that like saying that we have an adaptive fashion industry that exists separately from the fashion industry, like that by definition is not inclusive. So for me, like I don't think that that it's okay for like in the future for us to have adaptive and then we have fashion, like that to me does exactly what the question said, which is it segregates those worlds. What we want is inclusive fashion, or whatever you call it, whether it's universal design or inclusive fashion, like the biggest, most general like umbrella term that fits everybody. I think that that's like what we need to strive for, is just like clothing for everybody. Like, you know, whatever that looks like. And it doesn't mean that every item of clothing that a designer designs needs to work for everyone. That's not what we're saying. That would end up looking really ugly and it probably would be really, like, it'd be really expensive. It just wouldn't happen. What we need to do is we need to make sure that we have an industry that, like, you know, somewhere in there are products for everyone. So like, whether that's every designer of every brand needs to just think more about disability when they're designing, so that we end up with more like adaptive or accidentally adaptive items. Like, I think that's kind of the direction that we need to go in. And then that makes it about like our role is educating and like pushing other designers to just think more inclusively. So it's like less about like, you know, just like our own ability to produce adaptive clothing as a separate industry, but it's like, how can we have influence on other designers, just like all designers, so that one day we have clothing that works for everyone.
And you know, just listening to you both talk, it really sounds like the adaptive fashion industry will be that influence. It's like everything starts with the change, and having the existence of that in general will just spark that conversation, the ideas, the concepts that will lead to that multifaceted industry that has something for everybody. Poppy, I would love to know what your thoughts on the conversation of adaptive fashion and universal design. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. No, our effort at Open Style Lab really is to make designing for different bodies normal, so that we don't have to call it adaptive fashion, it just becomes fashion. And I think very similar to what Elena said, is that segregation of like, well, here's your fashion, but it's not like included in the normal fashion. And I think that's shown in examples even like Fashion Week, and I know we're making a lot of progress there, and London Fashion Week's coming up, maybe Yasmin could expand on that. But yeah, there's a lot to be done there for sure. And I also think that it's hard to differentiate, because many people are looking for adaptive fashion, and if it's already in the fashion that is out in the world, you don't have to look for it. You know, it takes away that labor. So I'll pass over to like Yasmin.
Yeah, because it's a struggle, because you need the adaptive fashion to build this community, and then, but you don't want it to be completely separate in the future, because it kind of feeds into the stigma. I think what we really need to think is how do we make it part of like mainstream fashion, but then also make it easy for people to find the actual clothing. Because me and Poppy were talking about this earlier, like, and a lot of people that I've interviewed, it's like, how do we, you know, what do you Google when you're looking for a shoe that works for you? And it's trying to find that balance of, you know, making it part, but also educating the brands that they need to have inclusivity from the get-go, from the beginning, like understanding from like what material they're using and which impairment it can be good for, so that they can either just describe it on their website or make a tag that people can find what they're looking for. So it's like you need the kind of two together. But I think, you know, to make it fully inclusive, you need to have designing for inclusion in mind in all the stages, especially at the end, like Quayshawn was saying, like, how do we find it? Like, how do we, you didn't know about that there was this thing called adaptive fashion. Well, when let's say you're looking on a Lululemon website, how do I find a legging that I know works for me with the material, with the lack of seams, with the stretch, whatever, and how do I search for that? They need to think about that when they're creating their brands and their website.
Such great ideas, and I hope they're taking notes when they're watching back this recording, because really this would all make shopping so much easier, not just for people with disabilities. Accessibility and inclusion, it would make the world so much easier for people who don't identify disabled as well. And really, this leads to the next question, and I would love to start with Lissie. Welcome back, Lissie. I'm so glad you were able to come back. What can fashion brands do better to be more inclusive? And I would love to start with you, because you have such great points of the fat phobia that are in the industry. How can they start making things better?
Oh, that's kind of I could go on all day about that. There's actually there's a brand that I think all fashion companies should follow the model of. It's called Smart Glamour. They have sizes like extra small to 15X. And they custom make every size. Like, that is literally, like, if you don't fit one of their standard sizes, they'll custom make it for you. And it's small, it's sustainable, it's ethical. And that is literally everything we need in the fashion world. Is like, I mean, that's adaptive fashion, point blank. That's adaptive fashion, because it's adapting it to the individual person, whether they have disabilities or not. I actually got a dress from them for my birthday. They're making it right now. And like, she's custom making a dress to my measurements. She said, like, I mentioned that I don't like the way that elastic pulls on my, like, squeezes my arms with like the style of dress that I'm getting. And she was like, okay, then measure it a little looser and I'll make sure that it doesn't squeeze your arms as much, because that causes, again, my allodynia with the fibro. And so, like, I don't mean to just like gush about this brand, but honestly, just like being inclusive is, in a way, it's adaptive fashion, because so much, all the mainstream straight size only Forever 21 brands don't make clothes for people of my size. And if I were to squeeze into like a Forever 21 3X, which I can't really do, but if I did it, I would be in so much pain from it. So it's like, sorry, I lost my train of thought, brain fog. But basically what I'm saying is just like, making fashion for everyone is what adaptive fashion is about. It doesn't matter if it's like making fashion to the size. It doesn't matter if it's making fashion for people with certain disabilities. It doesn't matter if it's making easy on and off clothes. Literally every single person can benefit from adaptive fashion. It doesn't matter if they're disabled or not. Like, anytime you get clothing tailored, that's adaptive fashion. That's getting your fashion adapted to you. That's all that adaptive fashion is fashion that is adapted to individuals. And yeah.
I love that you just went there and brought it back to something that the ableist society always normalizes: getting your suits tailored, getting everything hemmed to your body. Well, that's adaptive fashion. And really, that's it in the purest form, is making it fit to your body to make you comfortable however you are. Because what makes someone comfortable might not make someone else comfortable. And we all deserve to feel comfortable and beautiful, empowered, powerful. We deserve to feel any type of way we want our clothes to make us feel. And now, Quayshawn, I would love to hear from you. What can the fashion industry do better? How can they How can they do it?
I think, it's a good question. I believe at first, I think it starts with the insides of the fashion businesses and these companies. I think that there should be people of different backgrounds, and there should be people who will benefit from adaptive wear fashion in these focus groups, and on the design team, even on the marketing team, because as we talk and we discuss the different things about adaptive fashion and universal fashion and some of the mishaps that comes about with including everyone, is the representation and the marketing and promoting it or exposing it to the world for the world to be aware of it. I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we're having right now, with intertwining adaptive with mainstream fashion. So having someone who may have a disability or that is a designer, such as myself or anyone on this panel, or content creator like Lissie, in the room when it comes to creating advertisements and campaigns and creating different designs and different design hacks, I think that would be a great way for designers to be aware and also have firsthand experience on how these garments will affect a person aesthetically, as well as functionality as well. And I think once we get inside these buildings, inside these companies, to just let them know, like, we're here and this is what will make us, this will work for us, because that is a big market that the guys are missing as well. So yeah, I think that just having those people in the rooms, those focus groups, and just having that firsthand knowledge on how to move will help them see that they're missing something.
Definitely. And that would not only create a great opportunity for the fashion industry, but it would also create a great opportunity for that designer, the creator, because that would be like a paid opportunity, resume building, career making stuff. It's like everyone can benefit from working together to collaborate to be more inclusive. And Marta, Elena, I would love to hear your thoughts. What can we do better?
Yeah, I think Quayshawn brought up a really important point, which is that what we want is we want inclusion. A lot of companies are starting to hop on the diversity train, which is a good train to hop on, but it's not the finish line. The finish line is actually having businesses and marketing departments and design teams and executive teams that are fully inclusive. So not just saying hey, we'll use Black models or disabled models or fat models in our ads, but saying and we have them on our teams and we're making products and designs and services for the people that we're representing. So that takes it one step further than just diversity. We don't want tokenistic showings of diversity. We want real inclusion, and that requires everything that Quayshawn said. So having people in all levels of companies, making sure you're actually including people in the process of designing for their lives.
Yes, it's all about actually doing it and not just performing, not just saying you'll do it, but going beyond just that diversability, or not diversibility, that diversity statement that is all over the place, but actually doing the actions. And we have quite a few questions, so I'm going to skip the next question to go to my last one so we can get to our audience questions. And so Yasmin, I would love to know, how can someone with little fashion experience be someone that can make a difference in adaptive fashion? How can someone who has never been in the industry get their feet wet, I guess, to say?
So many ways. I think one way is you can maybe try hacking yourself, and experimenting, and just don't be afraid to try or to work with someone to try. That's one way. Another way is by at Open Style Labs, we started running these workshops and focus groups with people with disabilities, where we allow them to not allow them, we create this space that enables this group of people to share ideas together, share hacks, also get us to understand what are the issues so that we can create more content and education that we can do. So teaming up with with organizations that, you know, can be a platform that you can get your voice heard as well. Or like things that what Lissie's doing in being a content creator and creating your own content. There's so many ways that you can, you know, your experience, just your lived experience is enough. Like you have so much stuff you can offer, and you have so much knowledge that is so valuable in this space. So just sharing that knowledge in any way you can, and thinking about ways that maybe you can like collaborate with people. So, you know, if you don't have that skill, if you can't feel that you can't make, maybe, you know, talking with someone that could, or just sharing your ideas.
Awesome, great insight. And you mentioned Lissie, so I'm going to ask her the same question because she is a content creator. So Lissie, do you mind giving just a little bit of tips, or just how do you create your content to do what you love, so our audience can get some ideas of how they can get involved on their social media too?
Okay, so the first, like, I'm so excited to answer this question because when you sent the list of questions, I was like, this one, because I'm very passionate about the fact that everybody is an influencer. It doesn't matter how many followers you have, but like if you go to Walmart and someone says, wow, I like your dress, and then you say, yeah, thanks, I got it at blah 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 store, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna go buy one at blah blah store, and then you're an influencer. Like literally every person is an influencer. You influence people around you every day. And if you want to get into like the content creation influencing, the best tips I have for you, just make it fun. Do what you want, like don't stress. I mean, obviously it's a job, so it causes stress, but make it fun for you, you know, make it, wear what you want, talk about what you want. Like when I first started talking about disability stuff, I was so anxious because I was like, no one's going to want to hear about my disability stuff. I was supposed to be a plus size fashion person. I'm supposed to be a cool fashion lady. Turns out I can be both. But like people love my disability content because it's me. It's authentic. I shine when I talk about disability stuff. And yeah.
You really do shine, Lissie. Like I've had the honor of watching you really like start to be just your creation on social media, and it's been awesome just watching you grow more confident in your being. And it's like when you're unapologetically yourself, you give everyone else permission to do the same, and it's just so beautiful. And you have so much influence. Everyone has so much influence, and all you have to do is just exist and share your existence. And now we have so many questions, so I'm going to really try so hard to get through these questions to make sure we can get as much as possible. Our first community question is, I was wondering if the speakers would share their intersectional identities like race, sexual orientation, gender identity, and how it shapes their work in the disability and body positivity communities. Quayshawn, I would love to start with you, and Marta, I will come to you after Quayshawn.
Yes, can you repeat that one more time?
Yeah, of course. So how do your intersectional identities come together and shape your work within the disability and body positivity communities?
It's a good question. I mean, I think I would have to say, you know, okay. So with a lot of things that I do, I practice a lot of affirmations. I believe that a lot of the things that we think about starts in the mindset, and when you can build yourself a healthy mind, which I think is very important for anyone, but specifically for people who have disabilities. It's very important to make sure that you're positively talking to yourself and positively creating that self-image of who you are before you even step out into the world, because the way you think on the inside, I found out it shows on the outside. And so that plays a big part in the way that I create, in the way that I step out into the world, which is why I can step into any room and be 110% myself, disability and all, because I know that now my disability is not just a disability, but it's my super ability. So that all ties into just that positive thinking and that positive perception. And when you have that, you're able to do things that you didn't think that you can be able to do, because I didn't think that I could be a designer in a two-handed industry creating avant-garde and couture garments in the way that I'm doing it. And the fact that I'm doing it is because I believe in myself, and I'll continue to instill myself with those thoughts and those affirmations and the faith in God and everything like that. So I would have to say that, you know, just positive thinking and trust in yourself, because that's the biggest thing. As long as you trust yourself, and as long as you know your capabilities, and you know that you can do whatever it is you put your mind to, regardless of the outside world obstacles, you'll be able to achieve them. And it shows all through my work. And I'm fearless when it comes to creating beautiful garments and creating that fashion moment. And even when obstacles come up, I look at it in the face and I say, bring it on.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you can really feel the power in all of your work. It's definitely, the energy is so there. Just even from the computer, I can feel it. Marta, Elena, I would love to ask you the same question. How do your intersectional identities come together to really shape your work in the disability community and the body positivity community?
Yeah, I think it's been like kind of like a reciprocal relationship, because I feel like the intersections of my identity, which are, I guess, many, but including like Hispanic, white, American, whatever the opposite of Hispanic is, essentially, Hispanic, you know, Latina, same thing, neurodivergent, like creative, coming from a STEM background, short, like someone who deals with mental illness, so anxiety, depression, kind of all of these things have like shaped my work, but then I feel like my work kind of shapes those things as well. And I think that the last couple of years have really been like kind of a journey of identity for me, and like figuring out like what all of those things, when they come together, like what does it mean about who I am? Is that okay? And like feeling around that, and like having this experience the past few years where I feel like the friends that I've met and the community that I found have really like validated that like I'm fine just like as I am. And I think Poppy said this, and then Marie, I think you kind of said this as well when talking about Lissie, but like being unapologetically yourself like gives other people like the space to do so. Like it opens up the space for other people to do the same thing. And so that like just really stuck with me, Marie, when you kind of like summarize that up. But I think that that's like some of the important work that all of us have, like whether it's individually, like influencing in our personal lives or on social media, like Lissie said, or whether that's through working through amazing organizations like the Open Style Lab or designing for our own brands. Like I think all of those things, they're not just important for the work that they do, but that they open up space like for other people to see themselves reflected in something that's like legitimate and that other people are interested in, and that's just like a topic of discussion. Like it's just such a validating, important experience. And that's something that I've experienced over the past few years that I've never had before in my life. And so I just really look forward to like seeing like, well, how do we make that space bigger, like for more people, and just keep doing that.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And our next question, I'm going to give to you, Poppy. What I would love to get your thoughts on the juxtaposition of functionality and fashion. That is one of our community questions.
You can tell my brain fog's bad because I keep forgetting I'm on mute. I think there's often an assumption that functionality means boring and ugly. And I think throughout time, unfortunately, accessible fashion has been very medicalized, and it cannot possibly be functional and look good and be fashionable and be stylish. And obviously, I believe the tide is turning. I think we're really making effort. Everyone deserves style. It's what we stand for. But sadly, there are still these stigmas still. And even when I tell people I work in accessible fashion, they imagine 1970s ugly beige NHS style like clothing or braces. And it's like, no, like have you seen the cool stuff is being made. Like Tommy Hilfiger stuff is really cool. Like, are you kidding? And it's really hard to battle that assumption. I think that because it's still there, people don't make room for accessible fashion or even consider that they're allowed to have it too, whether they identify as disabled or not, which is unfortunately a big barrier. And I hope we're working to bring that down. I know we're working to bring that down. So I hope that answers your question. Feel free to like add to that, Yasmin.
I don't know if I can add to that. It's like, it's for so long, it's been, the disability world has been so clinical. And from someone that's spent like so much of her life in hospital, you know, you can see it in everything there, just the products. And the beauty is just, I love, let's say, the Maggie centers, because they're looking at how can you make the, you know, the health experience beautiful, from the smell to the design. And that shouldn't just, you know, it's starting to happen in architecture, but clothing is kind of, maybe because people think fashion is like, fashion is fashion, you know, but fashion is the social fabric of how we interact. And it not only makes, you know, I do a lot of research on the psychology of fashion as well. Like, it not only makes how we feel good, it makes also how other people can perceive us and how we can perceive the world in turn. And so it's so important to have the two together.
Sorry, just to add to that, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give the case study, and the example that we often use is glasses and how medicalized they were in the 1970s and 80s, horrendously medicalized. Then the 90s come along and suddenly they're a fashion trend, and now they're beautiful. And I know in the 2000s, I was wearing those 3D glasses popped out to look cool in my Facebook photos. And now it's a whole industry, and it's based around style and functionality. And it's not seen as a mobility aid at all. And it is absolutely a mobility aid. And I really hope that we can get to that point with adaptive fashion in general. Every single garment deserves that recognition and acceptance. So yeah, thanks for letting me interrupt.
Thank you for interrupting with that amazing point, because really that, I'm wearing glasses right now, you know, it's like, that's something that is so normalized, and people don't even think of it as a mobility aid, as a device that is a medical device. I mean, I used to work with someone who wore glasses that had no prescription whatsoever. She just wore them because she wanted to look cute. She told me she wanted to just wear them with her outfit. And so that would be that would be the goal, honestly, to make it something so normalized. So I love that insight. And I could just listen to you both from Open Style Lab talk fashion all day. I've learned so much so far. Thank you so much. We have a little less than 11 minutes left and still so many questions. So I'm going to combine a few. And Lissie, this one is for you. What is the power of representation in models? And how can content creation really be a segue to that representation?
Oh, sorry. Oh, did my camera turn off, or is it still on?
It's turned off.
Okay, let me fix it. I'm sorry. I'm just full of technical difficulties tonight. There we go. Yeah, so models is, okay, so the first thing that came to my head was like, when I was a kid, I literally thought that I was like I didn't know anyone else had hip dips. Like, I was like, why don't I look like anyone else that I see? And like, obviously I'm a lifelong fat person. So it's like, I didn't see anyone who really looked like me except for being like the butt of the joke. Like, and so it's just like that representation is like, I've posted a couple captions, like I said earlier, my captions are like mini blogs sometimes, but a couple of my captions have been about just like I want to be the representation for the little kid who doesn't, who's like, oh, I have, or like the teenager who's like, well, I have hip dips. I've never seen anyone else have hip dips. And I want to like wear skin tight skirts so that that girl can see, or boy, or they, them, that person, sorry, can see like, yeah, it's normal. All bodies are different and they should be celebrated.
For real. And I just think it's beautiful that social media gives us that chance to make our own runways, in a sense, make our own photo shoots. We don't need to be discovered anymore. We can discover ourselves in our own profiles. And hopefully the right account will see it eventually. And if not, you just still create anyway. And you create that grassroots representation that the little kids growing up get to watch, and they get to have what we didn't have. And that's what's so powerful. And our next question that I think is a really interesting question is, how does it make y'all feel when an adaptive brand is disabled owned versus abled owned? And so, Quayshawn, I would love to start with you. And Marta, since you're also a business that's disabled owned, I would love you to answer it too. So we'll see if we can fit both of you in real quick.
Okay, I believe that it just kind of creates that connection for the people that the adaptive fashion will serve. And it just lets you know that there are people that are like you or that are like me in the industry of fashion, fighting and putting in the work to create that representation, create those garments, create that functionality and that style. I think that just makes people feel more accepted, and it'll give them the courage and the motivation to step into their own individual style. And even if they weren't really interested in fashion, or they didn't think they could be, but there wasn't anything on the market for them, now that they have a brand with the owner who has a disability like myself, they can see now that there is strides to create that space for us, and know that there is someone who understands what your needs are, understands what you are trying to achieve, and even understanding the mishaps and the lack thereof of inclusion in mainstream industry. So I think that it would just create that level of acceptance, comfortability, and courage as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that I don't know if it's important necessarily, or more important for brands to be owned by disabled people versus non-disabled people. I think it clearly is. We don't have enough companies owned by people with disabilities yet, but I think in terms of the impact you have, it's more about are you making sure that you are just listening more than you're speaking? So I am neurodivergent, that falls under the umbrella of disability, but I can't design for experiences I don't have. And I don't have a feeding tube, I don't have a colostomy bag, but I make accessories for those things. And so I think for me, making sure that I am actually designing what people want, it requires listening and just kind of shutting up more than maybe we want to or we're used to. And I think that that's more important than is it a disability owned company? Is it not? I don't want to say that a company that's not owned by someone with disabilities can't have a great impact, because I don't think that's true. I just think it requires more intentionality about making sure that you are getting the information you need from the people you're designing for, regardless of who you are, whether you have a disability or not. No one has every disability in the world, right? And if you're trying to design for everyone, that means that you need to make sure you're hearing everyone's voices. So I don't know if that's an answer to the question or another topic, but I think that that's just something that companies need to keep in mind. You're not automatically inauthentic if you're not disabled. You just have the requirement of needing to make sure you're listening maybe harder than someone who does have a disability and is part of that community.
Beautifully said, because while there is such power in being a disabled owned business and working for one, I feel very lucky to work for a disabled owned business with Diversability. It's been a life-changing experience. It all comes down to the actions and the allyship. And as long as that action is where it's there, that's all that matters. And we have 5 minutes left. And so I want to spend this last 5 minutes amplifying our speakers. Where can we keep up with your work? And is there anything that you would like to end off with? Any final thoughts? Poppy and Yasmin, I would love to start with you both.
Hi, well, you can check us out at www. I don't know if that's still a thing now, openstylelab.org. And you can find all our information and all our projects and our case studies and things we worked on. You can find our hackability kit and our hacks at pattyandricky.com. And you can follow our social medias, which are at OpenStyleLab. We also have a Patreon now, which you can join and become a OpenStyleLab hacker, which is just more of an inner circle. And hopefully, as Yasmin might want to add, we're also building a more of a OSL ambassador, closer inner circle of a community. And we're very excited for that.
Just to add from what Marta said, which is, sorry, kind of sudden. Okay, yes, what Marta said, which is like about listening to people with disabilities. So a lot of what we do in Open Style Labs is, my job is just to listen to people. And I absolutely love it. And what we've done is we've taken all of the people that like we've interviewed and we've kind of introduced them to each other and made a community with it themselves. So now we're running workshops, we're running meetups for people to share ideas to and discuss between themselves. And I quickly wanted to add one more thing, which about the disability owned or not owned, and building off again what Marta said, which is we're all going to experience, I mean, I think everyone is going to experience disability at some point in their life. It's the one thing that we're all going to like 100% probably either know someone or have it in our life. So it's not about, are you disabled, are you not? It should matter to everyone because it's going to affect everyone. Old age, it's going to happen. So it's about bringing those voices to the forefront. If you don't have a disability yet, it's about listening.
I will mention our CEO, Grace. She doesn't identify as disabled, but she has plenty of disabled experiences in her life, and we've seen that over the whilst working with her. And it's the collaboration. I think collaboration is key. Yeah,
and
I wanted to add that.
She really fights for empowering people with disabilities and hiring more people with disabilities so that it can really elevate.
Yeah, because I can't do everything. I burn out so quickly, and relying on non-disabled people to take that burden and that labor is so helpful.
And the collaboration is key. And thank you both so much for tuning into the middle of the night to be here with this conversation. They are across the Atlantic Ocean, and we are just so grateful to have you guys. Real quick, we still got to get to Lissie, Marta, and Quayshawn. Lissie, how can we keep up with you? Do you have anything going on you'd like us to celebrate?
Well, I'm around like 70 followers away from hitting 3,000 followers on my Instagram. It's not a big number, but it's big to me. It's at Looks, LOOKSBY LISSIE, Looks by Lissie. And I have a blog, want to start blogging again eventually when I have energy. Fatigue has been killing me. So, but it's looksbylissie.com, same as the Instagram, just like .com. Yeah, I don't really have much going on right now. So
that 3,000 is such a big deal, and I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to celebrate once you get there. You have to let us know when it happens, because it doesn't matter what number that is. That's a big deal, and that's a lot of hard work that went into that. Quayshawn, how can we keep up with you? What's going on with Manikin? Any fun stuff we should know about?
Yes, so you guys can keep up with me on Instagram. My main Instagram is at Real Life Manikin. That's MANIKIN. And in my bio, I have tagged my at the One Hand Sewing Man, which has all my custom garments for people all across America that I've designed for. And it has a tag at Manikin Mob, which is the physical Manikin Mob brand of my ready-to-wear garments for my streetwear Manikin Mob. Well, you guys can look forward to seeing me on the runways during New York Fashion Week in September. That's what I'm gearing up for. So this Fashion Week, I've just been running around and getting dressed and networking and just figuring out where I want to showcase. So you guys can look forward to new designs, seeing me on the runway, and you never know, you might see me on your TV screen. So.
Oh man, I hope we do. That's so exciting. Congratulations. That's like a big year. Marta, Elena, how can we keep up with you and where can we follow you?
So I'm mostly on Instagram, but I'm trying to get into TikTok. It's just scary right now. But on Instagram, you can follow my brand, Abilitee Adaptive Wear. And Abilitee is spelled Abilitee, like t-shirt, instead of the correct way with a Y. And then my personal Instagram is Elena from Austin. So ELENA from Austin, AUSTIN.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time and having this conversation with us. Thank you everyone for taking the time and listening to us talk. We would love to continue the conversation in the Diversability community, and we can't wait to get connected again for one of our next Diversability Unplugged events. Thank you guys all for joining, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the night. Bye-bye.